like deep images, and we're going to continue this alternative sci-fi film series that we're doing. And it was so fun that we're going to continue it with some of our cast members that weren't able to make it for the last session. And just real quick, in case you didn't watch the previous ones, it's basically science fiction movies that aren't like, say you have a friend who's like, I want to see a science fiction movie, but not one that's in the 30 franchises of a billion films that people relate to as cinema science fiction since Star Wars. And so these would be our answers, some of our answers. Some of them are studio films that sank, some of them are totally indie films, some of them are foreign, whatever. But they're all different, and some of them were big in their day for like a brief moment or two, but now are just kind of cult films. So um I'm gonna break with precedent, and I'm gonna try to start out myself tonight because I didn't talk at all last time, believe it or not. I don't think anyone knew that except Richard. But yeah, so this movie I'm covering is called Murder in a Blue World. So this recently came out on Blu-ray on Cauldron Films, which I guess is a kind of a slowly growing boutique label. Murder in a Blue World is the 1973 Spanish-French co-production by Eloy de la Iglesia, who I have hyped a lot on this channel. Shelley reviewed one of his movies, Cannibal Man, on our very first episode, and I don't think we've reviewed him since. On my solo show, I reviewed No One Heard the Scream. So this is kind of from the same era when he was doing kind of genre stuff, but very subversive genre stuff. He was a homosexual communist in Francisco Franco's Spain. So there's going to be some commentary hidden in there. It's going to be bang you in the head, or it's going to be really slippery, and you've got to find it. And when you find it, it's very rewarding and interesting. I think he is brilliant. Of course, most people know him as the father of Alex de la Iglesia, who did Day of the Beast and Perdita Durango, and he has a Action Mutant, but he has a very recent one that's either about to come out or just did come out, but I don't recall the name of it. And I do like his stuff. I like Eloy's better, but I do like Alex's stuff. I thought Mark of the Devil, or that wasn't the name. What did I just say it was? The one about the devil. I thought it was good. I thought it was good. Or Day of the Beast, or whatever it's called. So anyway, this movie's had a whole bunch of titles, and the most prominent one was Clockwork Terror was an alternate title. And if you don't figure it out now, you will in a few minutes. It riffs on another very big science fiction disturbing film that came out 2 years earlier, which we covered recently. But the original name of the movie is Una gota de sangre para morir amando, which means a drop of blood to die loving. It was also known as Le Bal du Valdo, the Voodoo Ball in France, To Love Perhaps to Die in the US, and then finally when it came to video, Clockwork Terror. But the prominent video title they kind of settled on was Murder in a Blue World, and it's an allusion to this kind of I would say this like absinthe like beverage called blue drink that everyone drinks. So this is in the near future. So they all have their kind of soma, like Brave New World, but like A Clockwork Orange, as the alternate title implies, it's a place where there's a lot of crime and roving street gangs and juvenile delinquents. But as far as the people's the way they live, it kind of has this retro futurist look that's similar, like the televisions and the production design, the living rooms, sets are similar to stuff like I don't know, like Rollerball or Soylent Green, like not too far advanced, but how it might be in a short amount of time in near future. But not as out there looking as Logan's Run it started to get, and people are basically like there's people who have every convenience in the world, and there's a family, and they have kind of like these suits that look like, I mean, it's their lounging clothes, but it looks like Star Trek uniforms. And it's a mom and a dad and a kid, and on TV, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange is about to play, which is hilarious. So he does this all through the movie. There's all these in jokes. So And I'm thinking, how can is it going to be uncut? How is this little kid going to watch A Clockwork Orange? Are kids in the future just more sophisticated because the crime's worse? You know, they grew up around it. And why are they watching it? It's a cool looking TV, but it's like this big and they're way over here. You know, I mean, I sometimes think the 55-inch isn't enough for me, but you know, whatever. That's what people did back then. That's what they did in the 70s. I guess they figured it'd stay that way in the future. They would just have a cooler box around it. Um, anyway, they're broken into by this street gang of four guys, and they're kind of the opposite of A Clockwork Orange. They don't wear these ridiculous white jumpsuits. They wear these black leather or kind of biker suits, kind of rough trade, which, you know, again, I mentioned Eloy. And so they just go to town and they whip them, they rape a couple of them, they finally kill the father. Um, yeah, it's just total chaos. There are parts where they pick up abstract sculpture. It's not like genitals like in A Clockwork Orange, but it's really wild looking. And I can't think of the name of the stone that it is uh, that it's made out of. It's one I've had before, and it's just kind of a weird shape with a round hole in the middle. He starts looking through the round hole and making fun of them for having this furniture, this sculpture, just like Alex made fun of the lady with the phallic sculptor. So um, after they leave, they split and they go out and they get into this big argument amongst themselves. And you have kind of an hierarchy. They're with the exception of one of them, they're even more interchangeable characters than A Clockwork Orange. I mean, they're really pretty much just there. You know, they pretty much fill character slots. Like, here's three guys who are in a gang with one of our main characters. And the first two guys, who I can't even remember their names at all, they're just like total scum. Then there's one guy who's a little sympathetic to the fact that our main guy, David, played by Christopher Mitchum, which is Robert Mitchum's son. He was working a lot in Europe at the time because he couldn't get any work in the US. And he said he worked in Spain for 3 solid years and made a lot of money. So I'm like, more power to you, man. And
Yep.
David, they don't like David. They think David's kind of a wuss, you know. He's not aggressive enough. I don't think he raped anybody or killed anybody in the house. He just, you know, hurled whips at them and broke furniture, you know. So gotta go, man. But they got a big argument and they whip and beat him half to death. So uh he's just kind of chilling, and then he basically becomes like a homeless dude who kind of wanders the city. And we'll get back to him later. So our other major character is Anna Vernia, who is played by Sue Leon from Stanley Kubrick's Lolita. She's also reading a copy of Lolita a few times in the movie. Um, and she has just gotten this award for like humanitarian nurse of the year or whatever. And the doctor, one of the doctors at the institute, is played by Jean Sorel, that handsome devil from all those French and Italian movies. And he plays one of his, you know, kind of stock, kind of dull characters. He can play vibrant characters, but a lot of times he does play that kind of dull husband, like in Belle de Jour. So he's kind of like that. And but this time there's a twist on it. His name's Dr. Victor Sender, and he's a doctor who has developed a electroshock therapy that will turn these street gangs into useful citizens. So another echo from him, obviously. And so she and him are dating, but she's kind of like, nah, I don't really want to get that close to you. And each date gets more and more awkward between them, and he just keeps going on and on and on about his treatment. And they work in the same hospital, so she can't completely avoid him. But so he says, I'm going to get this treatment perfected soon. What he doesn't know about Anna is, well, see, I mentioned that there's a lot of crime in the city and it's kind of rampant. And there is the street gangs, but there's also been a serial killer at large. And mostly been killing young men, like late teens ish. And of course, the media is not as progressive in this future as ours is right now, even. And they were like, it's some sadistic homosexual killing them. And I was like, all right, whatever, dude. And which is a joke because Eloy was homosexual. So, you know, he makes fun of homophobia like constantly through this movie. And so it's the nurse, Anna Vernia. She's like one of those angel of death serial killers who give you your final mercy and put you out of your misery and get you to a better place. All justifications in their somewhat insane mind to why they're killing these people. And there's been a few famous ones in history, and I can't remember any of their names right now, despite reading volumes. But she is clearly that kind of character. You don't really know it at first. She just acts kind of weird about, she acts weird about a lot of stuff. Like she definitely has a secret to hide. And her and Dr. Cinder attend this auction for artwork. And so in the near future, which Wikipedia says this was a prescient thing, which it kind of was a prescient thing. In the near future of 1973, comic books are considered high art that's shown in museums and auctioned off for tons of money. So there's an original page of the first Flash Gordon strip by Alex Raymond. All that's authentic. Unfortunately, their dates are totally wrong. They're like, this was 1932. And I don't know if he's making fun of the auctioneers or if Eloy just doesn't know. I think he might be making fun of them because they're kind of pompous. They're young guys, but they're kind of pompous. They're like, it was 1932, right? He's like, yes, 1932. I believe it was New Year's Eve when it came out. And January 1933. And I'm like, no, it started in 1934. What are you talking about? And so in their alternate future, I guess it started a year earlier. But it's a beautiful page, as all of Alex Raymond's pages were. It's not among his later, like super Baroque stuff that looks like Doré, but great stuff. And she outbids everybody. So one frustrated guy who's a little disabled, he walks with a cane, and he tried to outbid her and failed. But he asked her for a phone number and her address, and she gives it to him. When the doctor's not around. And later that night, he comes to visit her. And she pretty quickly seduces this guy. And afterwards, he's talking to her about himself, and he's very self-conscious about being disabled, like being, not being able to walk, totally right. I get it, man. And he she tries to console him, and it's like, no, you're a real man. And she doesn't outright say it like they would nowadays, but she's basically, yeah, you were great in bed, man. And he's like, thank you. And so he falls asleep, and while he's sleeping, she takes this long, thin needle out of this music box where she hides it, and she just slowly drills it through his chest until it hits his middle of his heart, and he dies in his sleep. So that's her modus operandi. So as the movie goes on, it goes more into, we see her for a long time before we get back with David, the juvenile delinquent. Another instance, she dresses as an old woman and hangs out at this lounge, and she's reading Lolita, and this guy named Bruno picks her up, and he's perfectly willing to be a gigolo for her. He's a young, muscular guy. So they go back to her house, and he is also part of the consumer society that is showing us Clockwork Orange and selling blue drink. And one of the things they're selling is this incredible underwear that has leopard spots on it that, you put it on and you are immediately, super, super more potent than you ever would be. But so after he kind of, he strips and he's got the briefs on, and he's very Tarzan like, he's kind of like, oh, this would be perfect if you were a young blonde. And I'm like, dude, that was so rude. But then she's like, actually, I am a young blonde. So then they go to bed. And in his case, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Same way she kills him. But this time, David witnesses it because he's gotten friendly with her German Shepherd at the back door. So her German Shepherd inadvertently lets him in the unlocked back door. And so he's just like casing her house. She's got this beautiful kind of Victorian house. She's a big collector, not just of art, all this extra eccentric stuff. At one point, she tells the origin of her parents and like the time they lived in, which, it would probably be our time right now, or maybe in the 1990s or something. And how she inherited the house and all the antiques and stuff. But the parents were kind of not that great. And that's about the only insight we get into her sociopathology. And So finally, David hangs back, hides, and she goes out again on one of her journeys. And this time she goes to a gay bar. She disguises as a drag queen, a drag king. So she wears like a really awesome pinstripe suit with this awesome tie. She's got a wig that's got her hair like really kind of really short bob. And she's just kind of hanging out at the bar, and a few women are checking her out, and she's just kind of aloof. And so this one guy named Roman comes up to her and he starts talking to her. And, again, she's kind of playing this character out. And slyly kind of is like, you want to come back to my house and hang out? So he assumes she's a lesbian. They're just gonna like hang out. So they go back to her house, and she reveals that, I'm not a lesbian. She doesn't say I'm not a lesbian. She basically says, no, I want to have sex with you. Let's go to bed. And he's kind of uncomfortable at first. Um, but he's not uncomfortable because he's gay. It's because he's never had sex with a woman, and he's at a gay bar, but he's more kind of bisexual. And but he's never been with a woman. So he's kind of like, why not? Let's go. So they they have sex, and yeah, the same thing happens. So David confronts her, and he's like, I know your secret. Basically like, I'm a criminal too. I don't want to turn you into the police, but I would like I would like to blackmail you, and you pay me money to be quiet about this, because I'm broke and homeless. And she's very angry, but she agrees to do it. And her motives are a lot of times very unfathomable, and I really like the way Sue Leon plays the part, because she really plays off that, even though she's an adult now, but kind of like the whole an evolution of a character like Lolita that is everyone thinks is blonde and beautiful and perfect and sweet and kind, and she's a nurse, and really she's just got all these bizarre dark impulses floating around. And there's some creature at the edge of the screen there. It's Keith.
It's me.
Welcome, Keith
Hey,
Howell.
Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Hi.
I'm in the midst, not too close, pretty close to the end of my first film. So it's called Murder in a Blue World. Catch you up a little. And so the blackmail thing goes on for a little bit, and David buys himself a motorcycle. Dr. Cinder gets more vehement rather, about virulent too, but he gets very vehement about how he's got to do the electroshock, and she's sick of talking about it. And they don't get into all the moral implications like A Clockwork Orange, but it's a parody, so I don't expect it to be go deep, but it's there if you want to find it. And so David gets beaten up by his old gang. Unlike in A Clockwork Orange, they don't become cops. They're still in the gang, and they think that he's got all this money that he stole from one of their heists. It's all from her, and they beat him. They beat him a lot worse this time. This time he can't talk. Half his bones are broken. One of his eyes is fucked up. So he goes to the hospital. So guess which hospital he goes to? The one where these other two main characters work. And so when they find out, they get a little summary on him by doing a little research. Immediately, Victor Cinder's like, yes, he'll be my first test patient. Well, not his first, but he'll be a perfect test patient. He's had a few others. This is going to be his youngest one, his first like real juvenile delinquent, and he's pretty excited. And he tells her about it, and she's determined that he's not going to do that to this guy, because she kind of has a liking to him, and it's they have a weird dynamic. And so she takes him from the area where he's supposed to be rolled to the experiment, and they go to the other floor, and she sits by his bed, and she's like, no, don't try to talk, it's okay. And are you afraid of me? And he's terrified out of his wits by her, and because now he's at her mercy. And so she reads him an Edgar Allan Poe poem, I forget which one, and it's New Year's Eve, and she's trying to create this whole kind of atmosphere for him, and you can probably see where it's going, but she just tells him it's going to be okay. And she gets that needle and just starts drilling away, and while he's unconscious this time. Then we flash to Victor, and he's like, what's going on, where'd she go? And when he finds them, she's laying over him and looks up, and she's just got blood all over her, and she's smiling, and I think she's finally totally utterly cracked. And there's an observation room where they look at the people who've already had this technique, and they're not looking at it. He's talking to a nurse about this situation, and it's, oh my God, you know. And so what we see as the audience, and the camera starts to home in on, is there's these reformed delinquents, and they're all dressed like British, rich British guys for some reason, and they're having this, you know, dinner, this formal dinner. But one like gets mad at the other, and elbows him and bumps him, and then he throws food at him. And within a couple of minutes, all four or five of them have brutally murdered each other in all gory ways you can imagine, with no survivors whatsoever. And that's the moral of the story, I guess. But I thought it was a hilarious ending. But it definitely, of course, it definitely is kind of not making the point that is this ethical and will it work, but it just can't work. You know, it's just no way it's going to work. You know, and you know, I don't know. Eloy's probably more cynical than Anthony Burgess. But so next up, after that masterpiece, and I wanted to echo Justin's great take on A Clockwork Orange. That's why I wanted to do this first. Kaelyn?
All right. Well, to follow that one up, I feel like this is almost Henry's turn part two, except it's not. But he's the one who recommended the film that I'm going to be talking about to me. So thank you a million times over. I'm going to be talking about Liquid Sky, which came out in 1982. Yes. So saw it for the first time this week. Absolutely loved it. Cannot believe I had not seen or really even heard of it before, because it is so up my alley that I was just
You
like,
heard of it
oh
through
man, you
us.
really nailed this recommendation.
Yeah, because
Yes.
we told you about it in one episode.
You did. ADHD. It
Forgot.
just went out of my brain
But
forever.
when I told you this topic, that I thought
Yeah.
about this, that was the very first movie I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then of course a certain person wanted to, you know, take it away from me, and they're no longer with us. So then I was like, I guess I'll have to do it. But then I'm like, no,
That's
I want
fair.
to hear Kaylyn's thoughts on this. So
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, thank you for recommending it twice, I guess.
sure.
Yes, sometimes these details just go out of my brain, but
It's a lot going on.
hadn't heard of it until this podcast. Let's put it that way. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Fantastic film. It came out in 1982. This was directed by Slava Sukerman, who is a Jewish Russian immigrant to the United States. The starring lead role in this is Anne Carlisle, who actually played two characters in this film. The protagonist of the film, Margaret, and her kind of like arch nemesis slash weird counterpart. They're very, very similar characters in a
Very
lot of ways.
unhealthy
Also
dynamic.
super, super like sexually into each other, and it's intense. But that other character is Jimmy, and he's a guy. So there's all this really interesting like stuff about gender and sex and drugs and art and all of this going on in this film. So Margaret is a model who's in the kind of like punk, post-punk, avant-garde art scene in New York City. And Jimmy is a rival who's also a model. Everybody comments on how they look alike, which is kind of hilarious when you realize, hey, it's totally the same actress playing both characters. Which, you know, it's obvious. Like they do nothing to make it not
The
obvious.
first time
Like,
I saw it, for the first 5 minutes that I saw Jimmy, I thought it was someone else, and then I gradually was
yeah.
like, I asked my
I was
girlfriend,
trying
I'm
to
like,
figure
is
out
that
what
the
the deal
same
was
actor?
until I got like a good look at both of their faces like in a row, that I was just like, okay, this is a female actress playing this guy. Has to be. Has to be. Has to be.
She's just a great actress.
She's phenomenal. Like both characters were very, very well done. And actually like starting out in it, I got more into the film as it went on, but like in the first like few minutes of it, I was just kind of like, man, like the visuals are really cool. This is a really beautiful, weird, trippy, psychedelic film, and I'm for it. But the acting is kind of and the writing is kind of But then it got so much better as it went on, and I really feel like that initial stuff that kind of turned me off to it until I got deeper into the film, because I knew it was going to be good, or you wouldn't have told me to watch it, because you know my taste very well.
Well, I just want to say real quick, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a movie, a more recent movie that I would compare it to in that sense is Anti-Birth. I don't know if y'all have seen it, But basically,
Mm,
Natasha Lyonne and her friends, they're all like these, drugged out grunge kids. So for most of the first of the movie, you're experiencing this weird phenomena through their eyes, and you're kind of like, oh, they're really lame. And then you finally get the exposition guy toward the end, and you reveal the whole other layer. And of course, that's exactly what happens in this.
right. Right. And that is what's going on with this one. And what really kept me going in it was like, one, the fact that it was just very visually fascinating to watch. Like it is a very,
Yeah.
very visually beautiful film. And I was really intrigued by that, like just all of the weird like color and like visual manipulation that they do. It's really hard to describe. But as you're seeing things through the point of view of this alien character that is in this like weird flying saucer that totally looks like two dinner plates like pushed together with like a light in the middle. And that actually is about how big it is. So I'm like, I think it was probably dinner plates. I did not have time to
Yeah,
look
he's
up
a
all of
tiny
the
character.
yeah, teeny tiny alien. You see everything in like these weird blotchy colors, and it's very interesting to look at. And there's this like really weird soundtrack that just kind of is like hammering this beat the whole
Yeah.
time. And I was just so intrigued by all of that because I'm like, okay, this all has to be for a reason. It's not going to be just like this cheesy whatever's going on here. There's something deeper here. There's gonna be. I'm waiting for it, and it pays off. It absolutely does. Um,
Yeah.
so all of that, and also just like Anne Carly Siles acting
And
is
Carlisle.
hmm?
Carlisle.
Carlisle. Did I
Yes,
write it
ma'am.
down wrong?
No, the S is silent.
Carlisle. Oh no,
Carlisle.
Yeah.
I just literally added an extra letter in there every single time I read her name. Great. Love
It's one I messed up when I was a kid, and
Hmm.
my mom was like,
God.
"Don't say that at school; they'll make fun of you, like Harry or
Ugh.
something." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's the problem with having ADHD and reading everything really, really fast.
Hmm.
Anyway,
No problem. No problem.
Carlisle, thank you. Anyway, she's phenomenal. And just I really like kind of just got more and more into the character of Margaret as the film went on because one, I related to her a lot as a queer person. And two, just she was just really compelling in a lot of ways, like her story, everything that was going on in her life, wanting to understand her as a person and all of that, and being like, okay, there's more to this woman than meets the eye. So she's out as bisexual. She's a very sexual person. She does stuff at this club. She hooks up with people.
But she does
um
have a relationship.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting there. There's stuff going
Okay, I
on.
didn't want you to skip that character because that's my favorite character in the whole movie in a way.
Oh yeah.
All right,
Just
I'm getting there. I
okay.
have
Pretends.
notes.
Because Tim Tolbert mentioned that to me the other day, and he's like, "I'm obsessed with that actress," and I was like, "Yeah, well, we'll cover her in Liquid Sky eventually." Go ahead.
All right. Now I'm paranoid and I'm like, which character are you
Yeah.
talking about?
No,
Uh-oh.
you know who I'm talking about. Somebody who's been
No,
in
I
another
don't.
big heart.
I make no assumptions.
These guys will know another movie she's been in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Let her
Anyway.
go.
Let me talk.
I love
All
you,
right.
Kaelyn.
Love you too. Anyway, so her life is just going through all of this stuff. She so early on in the film, she's at the club and everything and working. The other character who's played by Anne Carlisle, Jimmy, basically is interested in hooking up with her. They go back to her place. They're gonna, do stuff. He's very, very obsessed with drugs and ends up trying to steal the drugs of her roommate, Adrian, who isn't there at the time, but that's really all he wants. He's very, very obsessed with drugs and particularly like opiates, particularly heroin. And that's like what he's really looking for more than anything. And then they cut it off because she's like, no, you can't just steal my roommate's drugs, get the fuck out, basically. And he starts antagonizing her and says she's ugly and all of this. And it starts this whole weird, like, they're so into each other, but they also hate each other, like kind of like rival mance thing going on, as the kids today call it.
Yeah.
So all of this is going on. You kind of follow both characters. At the same time, there's also this German fellow who is studying the alien because he notices, oh, all this weird stuff is going on. And he finds out where the alien is over by Margaret and Adrian's building where they live in the penthouse. And he's just kind of observing all of this stuff that's going on through a telescope, literally just like watching stuff in their apartment, which is very fucking creepy, to be completely honest. But it's for plot reasons, so I'll forgive him. And there's a point where Margaret ends up with this guy who date rapes her, which is awful. She's fighting him back against it. He's like, "Oh, you should take these drugs. You know, you're really gonna
He's
like
a
them
real
or
drug
whatever."
head.
And he ends
Yeah.
up forcing her to take them.
Mm-hmm.
And then she, fights back. She wants a drink. She like puts alcohol in his face, and stuff like that, and ends up running out of her apartment and tries to go down the stairs. He rapes her on the stairwell, and she gets, I guess, knocked out, and he just runs off. So that horrible experience happens to her. She carries on with her life, and I'm just like, oh my God, you poor woman. She goes to visit her former professor, who is an acting professor, Owen, and she, it's revealed, has a relationship going on with him. He's really into her, and he wants to basically like show her that this like weird subculture that she's gotten involved with is maybe not the best thing for her, but she's like, nah man, I love this. Like I love my weird art. I love doing the job that I do and all of this. It's really good for me. And he talks about like, oh, like you just swear all the time. Like every other word you say is either shit or fuck. And it's like, why? And she's like, well, what do you want me to say? Make love instead of fuck? And he's just like, yes, actually, I want to do that. Let's go. And she's like, yeah, okay, fine. So they end up having sex. And at the end of that, Owen has an orgasm and dies on top of her. Just suddenly, just all of a sudden, he just stops moving. She's just like,
It happens at the exact moment that everyone in the audience is just fucking sick of him.
super annoying. Super annoying. Yes. Like the worst, like you kids these days.
He's
like,
a hippie though. You don't get it? It's like the
hippie.
hippies versus the punks,
It is the hippies versus the punks, and that's also very real life because God, like all of these hippies like turned into the very man that they said that they were rebelling against, and then they start telling kids in the 80s and 90s to stop being rebellious and so on and so forth, and it happens with every generation. And it's really funny knowing that like he came from that hippie subculture, and she's like, you were like this too, did your professor wearing a suit like think that your jeans were like ridiculous and too sexual? And she has a good point. Anyway, she gets out from under him. She sees that he has like something sticking out of the back of his head, pulls it out, and there's this weird like clear crystal. And she's just like, I don't know what the fuck this is about. This is super weird. And it comes out no blood or anything. It's just an odd situation. As the audience, you're just like, oh, something aliens, I guess. She has Adrian come in, or Adrian comes home, sees the dead body, and is just like, oh shit, that's kind of fucked up. I guess this guy just died here. All right. And they do this bizarre like wake for him where they like put him like on a table and cover him in this like shiny like foily stuff. And Adrian does this whole spiel about how oh well, looks
one
like
of
you
her
got
poems.
Huh?
One of her poems.
Yes, because she's a performance artist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she does this like she does this like spoken word kind of poem thing about going to hell, and how that's like the fun thing to do actually, and it's a really suitable thing for him to have ended up going there and whatever. And then this all finishes and she's like, I've always wanted to fuck a dead guy. Just out of absolutely nowhere. And she's like, I want to do it. I'm gonna do it. And Margaret's like, can you actually please not?
Adrian is a nihilist, if y'all haven't gotten
She
that.
is a nihilist. Yes.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She wears all black, unlike all the other people there.
Mm-hmm. And a cross around her neck, which
and she
is
performs
interesting.
with a rhythm box.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I'm skipping some of these details just so that I don't take like an hour to talk about
No,
this
you're
movie.
okay. You're
God,
okay.
there's a lot in it.
Just sometimes I go, whoa, whoa, wow, that's so cool because I just love that movie so much.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just rewatched it recently too, so it's kind of fresh.
I'm gonna have to watch it again and just kind of appreciate it all over again because there's
man.
so much in there with like the symbolism and the cultural stuff that I'm just like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So Margot's like, can you actually please not just fuck this dead guy in our apartment? That would be fantastic if you would not do that, you weirdo. And Adrian just like climbs on top of his face and starts humping him. And it's just like, what am I watching? And like, I got to this point, I was just like, I was not expecting necrophilia to be a thing in this film, but okay, here we are. Sure.
Paula Shepherd is, I'm just gonna say it, get out of the way.
Yeah.
Paula Shepherd is hot as hell.
She is.
And a few of us, like me and
But
Tim
that scene was
Tolbert, are
so
huge
uncomfy.
fans. But she's not famous for that movie. She's famous for playing a much younger little girl in Alice Sweet Alice with Brooke Shields. So that's how.
So
most
I'm
horror
assuming
fans know her.
now that Paula Shepherd is in fact the actress you were mentioning earlier, where you're like, don't forget this character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
But you know,
I thought that was the case. I just wanted
she
to make
retired.
sure.
She's alive, but she retired years and years ago from acting.
Yeah, she had very small amount of roles.
She's a goddess. Go ahead.
She is phenomenal though. Yes. And
I mean, I hate Adrian,
really,
but I love her.
Yeah. Love the character in the sense that she was really interesting and very well acted. Hate the character in that, oh my God, what a weirdo. And just ugh. Anyway, where am I in my notes? So that happened, and they proceed to get into a fight over it. Adrian pulls a switchblade out, and Margaret is trying to like wrestle it away from her. There's like kind of this tension where they're like both like on top of his body, trying to wrestle the knife like away from each other. And I was just like, is this gonna turn into, are they about to, oh God, please no. That would just be too weird right now. Later in the film, sure. Wink. But all right now, they end up just dropping the knife, giving up on the fight. They're just like, okay, fine. We don't actually want to kill each other right now. That's not gonna be a thing. So then, all of this shit has happened, and Margaret is super, super freaked out by it. She's just like, oh my God, this guy just died because, you know, he had sex with me and like, this is weird, right? So then she encounters this other guy, Paul, who is, he was the boyfriend of the woman who's working with the German guy on watching the aliens, correct?
Yes, because he's a drug addict, so she kicks him out.
Yeah.
And then she tries to fuck the professor, but he's more into the UFO.
He really is. UFO sexual.
Hey, that's probably a thing. That is probably a thing.
Sure.
That's definitely a thing. Like, okay, I research and read a lot about and teach about sexuality. There are definitely people who are into UFOs. That is definitely a thing. So Paul is you know, this creative type as well. He says that he needs opiates in order to do his art. He's clearly just a heroin addict. And that's a thing that he's, you know, struggling with, but he tells himself he's not. Right. But he's also very, very biphobic. He's very freaked out by the idea that Margaret, who he's very attracted to, would want to have sex both with men and women. And he's just like, how is that? And she's just like, it's normal, you know, people are just like this. And he's like, well, I don't want to have sex with men. And he goes on to try to rape her because of the biphobia, which is super, super gross.
And this was 1982. This is way ahead. This was 1982. This was way ahead of its time.
It really was. And I was also thinking about like the historical context, right? Of like, this is like smack at the beginning of the AIDS crisis and everything too. So like homophobia and biphobia were tremendous at this time. I actually, like, I double checked the dates and people were aware something weird was going on with it in the first couple years of the 80s. And then 82, This premiered in August, and then the next month, the CDC announced the thing about HIV/AIDS and like actually started calling it that.
I'm pretty sure that I read that Slava Zuckerman had a friend or two that did die of AIDS, but
yes, yeah. So super ahead of its time as a film, and culturally like very, very well timed, like incredible. And especially because, you know, like bisexuality is one of those things that people didn't and still often don't acknowledge nearly as much as maybe they should, because it's a thing. Also, in honor of this movie, I'm definitely wearing jelly bracelets in bi-colors. I actually didn't do that on purpose, but like I looked down at my wrist before we started recording. I was like, that's perfect.
I love those bracelets.
Yes, they're amazing. So Paul tries to rape her because of biphobia, and he also ends up dying, which is amazing. And again, he has this crystal in his head, and she's just like, this is a thing. This is the second time this has happened. This is a pattern. I know a pattern when I see a pattern. And she's like, okay, I guess, you know, my pussy has teeth. If people fuck me, they die. This is great.
I love
I'm
those
gonna use this. So it's amazing. I love how she just goes from this character who's having all of this traumatic shit happen to her to being like, oh, I can use this. This is great. But also terrible because, you know, she didn't want to kill Owen, for example. You know, he was somebody that was, you know, a problematic situation because of the like mentor role, but it was consensual in that, you know, he didn't force himself on her.
I get the feeling that in that scene, most of the straight men are rapists anyway.
Honestly,
like date rapists, just kind of like waiting for that moment. And that was also something that really wasn't talked about in 1982, but it happened.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff was like an open secret, and people knew about that, and that's true in a lot of these subcultures today too. You find out about these things, and it's just like, yeah, everybody knew that guy was like a problem and a jerk, and it's like, well, do something about it, you know.
Yeah.
And from Margaret's point of view, it's like, well, now I have an opportunity to fucking do something about it. So then she there's going to be a photo shoot at the penthouse where she and Adrian live. Jimmy's going to be there as well. They're both promised lots and lots of cocaine, which they both want because yay, cocaine. And she gets just kind of like verbally harassed by Jimmy, and also kind of the rest of the crowd of people that are there, like doing their makeup and clothes and stuff and photography.
They're so mean.
And everybody's like, you know, teasing her. He calls her chicken woman. He's like, oh, you're just like the ugliest woman ever. And she's like, yeah, well, you're the most beautiful boy ever. Don't you want me to fuck you? And it's just like, what? So she's just being like bullied by all of these people, and she's just like, all right, you know what? You want this. I know you want this. She ends up backing him into a wall. Everybody's like, do it. This will be like the best photo shoot ever if she fucks him, because they hate each other, and it's amazing. And it's very bizarre, but she ends up giving him a blowjob, and he also ends up dying when he has an orgasm. Hey! So we see what's going on at this point, right? People achieve their orgasm, they end up dying. Crystal in the head, and the aliens also start like vanishing the bodies, because I think this one was after Paul. She basically is like, I can't do this anymore. I can't have any more bodies just in my apartment. And the aliens just kind of go poof, and the body's gone. They do her solid. It's great. Real good solidarity there. And then everybody's just like, what the hell just happened? Did you kill him? Where did he go? What did you do with the body? What is going on here? And she's just like, this is a thing that happens. People have sex with me and they die. I don't know. And Adrian's just like, bullshit. And she's just like, no, for real. This is a thing that happens. If you have sex with me, you will die. And Adrian's like, I will bet you $300 I will not die if I have sex with you. She's just like, no, don't do this. You will freaking die. And Adrian is an idiot and proceeds to also rape Margaret because there was no consent here. It's not a good look.
This is the first movie or anywhere I saw scissors going on.
I don't even know if I can call that scissors. It was very awkward.
I think some people would.
I was just watching this like, no.
Well, obviously Adrian liked it.
Yes, but that was acting. That's not actually what two people with those body configurations having sex look like ever.
It was close, but not there.
Anyway, just take my word for it.
It was because of the intimacy coordinator.
You're a woman,
Yeah.
so we're going to take your word for it. There weren't intimacy coordinators
I
on
know.
set back then. Damn it.
I know that.
Oh no, I know.
All right, so Adrian basically asks two of the people who are around to hold Margaret down to keep her from being able to fight back. She rapes her, yikes, basically by like forcing herself between her legs at a very weird angle and very forcibly humping her, which it just didn't look very convincing at all. And I was just kind of like, what the hell?
She's
like,
really humping her inner
uncomfortable
thigh.
because of the rape too.
She's really humping her inner thigh while she's grounded onto her knee.
Yeah,
well, that just sounds like the same thing I see sometimes in movies, where they're having sex and you can like, how are you getting it in there? Because where you're at is just nowhere near where you're supposed to be.
Are you talking about like literally every sex scene in the room? Because
just saying. Yeah. I mean,
as bad as this was, it's still not as bad as the fact that
it's like I can believe in the in aliens and superpowers and all that, but I can get pulled out of the movie by bad fake sex.
Same, like bad intimacy coordination stuff, and I'm just like, that's no. Anyway, so this happens. Adrian, of course, ends up dying. Oh. Shocker. Body disappears, and Margaret freaks out because, of course, she didn't want this. She didn't want that to happen, one, because she didn't consent to it, like, as a sexual thing to happen at that time with that person in that moment. And two, because she didn't want her roommate to die. She cared about her. They were very close. And there was this, like, tension between the characters where it's like, you see that there's something going on there, But she's just like, you're going to die. Don't do this. I'm warning you. And
but see, I think Adrian bullied her. She
really did. Yeah. There was like a power dynamic there. But I also interpreted it as like mutual attraction, but not in a healthy way.
Right.
Honestly, none of the relationships in this entire movie are even remotely healthy. So there you go.
I related to Margaret. I really did.
Yeah. Oh God.
There was.
I don't know.
There was such an era of misery about this whole film.
True.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's grim.
It is. Yeah. So Adrian dies. And after that, there is this, my favorite part of the entire film, honestly, is Margaret has this happen and she just kind of starts like doing this monologue and being like, I told you. I kill people with my cunt. I don't know how many times I have to tell you people before you fucking believe me. She starts turning out all the lights in the apartment, dramatically talking about this and how, like, yes, I had this traditional upbringing. I'm from, I think she said Connecticut or something like that. And like, normal girl and all that stuff. It was never right for me. I never fit in. And that's why I was drawn to the scene. And that's why my sexuality is like this and all of that. And she's just talking about it and just all of these terrible things that have been happening. And she's just like, but it's honestly like a gift. And so she has all the lights out. She starts applying this like paint, makeup, glow in the dark stuff all over her face, and like this cool avant-garde like look while doing this monologue. Then lights come back on and she's like, all right, we're going to the club. Let's go, everybody. And they're just like, okay. I guess we can do that. Sure. We just saw two people die by having orgasms and disappearing. Sure, let's go to the club. That sounds good. So they go back to the club that they all go to. She finds the date rapist who got to her before, and she then proceeds to seduce him. He's very into it at first, and then she's just like, trying as quickly as possible to get him off so that he will fucking die. And he's just like, whoa, slow down. Why were you in such a hurry and all that? And she's just like, reasons. You want this. It's great. And he finally does. He dies. His body disappears. And she's just like, yes, mission accomplished. Fuck that guy in particular. And she then goes back to her apartment. She puts on this beautiful white gown that really looks like a wedding dress. I think there's a lot of amazing symbolism there.
It is her wedding dress.
It is literally her wedding dress.
Yeah, no, the characters, because she wants to marry. I won't give it away until you do.
Okay, gotcha. I guess I missed the exact moment that she said something about that, but got it from the symbolism. So wedding dress, she is feeling like in love with the alien that has been empowering her to kill her rapists, basically, which is really, really cool and also really, really concerning. And I'm just like, Margaret, you poor thing. You need therapy.
Beautiful.
You need therapy, my dear. That's really what you need. But it is really beautiful at the same time, though, because she's been this unhappy person for her entire life, because she never fit in growing up. And then she gets to the subculture that she feels very drawn to and very connected to, but everybody in it is garbage. They treat her like shit. Like, the only person who treats her even remotely well was probably Owen, and even he was just kind of this mansplaining old dude. And it's like, God,
yeah,
you know,
mansplaining.
It's terrible. Nobody gets her. Nobody treats her well. She's not seen as a peer by anybody. So she's fallen in love with this alien, basically. And she's like, oh, take me with you, because she sees that the flying saucer like starts levitating. She's like, no, don't go. What the fuck? Don't leave me here by myself. I can't like live in this world alone with how shitty it is. And she then proceeds to inject heroin into her arm in order to give herself an orgasm, like this weird like full body thing, so that she can be taken by the alien as well. And in the process of this, Adrian had hidden the drugs behind this like porcelain mask that hung on the wall. And as the movie's starting, you see that, and you see like these weird visual effects and colors and everything focused on that mask. And she smashes the mask in order to get to the drugs that she ends up taking. And I feel like the smashing of the mask also is kind of like the shattering of, you know, like the mask that everybody wears, trying to like fit in and trying to hide, you know, like the monstrosity and the sexuality and the queerness and the, you know, weirdness of everybody and everything. It's like, all right, this is all a facade. Like, I know what's up.
I never
all these
thought of
people
that.
suck.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I interpreted that. And all the while this is going on, also the German guy who's been watching the alien comes over, explains to her what was going on. She stabs him for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't
just
like
kind of
that.
lost it. I understand. She's been through a lot in the last
he's the only good guy in the movie.
Length of time that this movie takes place in. I understand. I would go crazy too.
Yeah.
So she stabs him. And then, you know, the woman who's been working with him witnesses this through the telescope, comes over and sees her, Margaret, go poof, and the alien flies off, and that's the end of the film. So Margaret also gets taken, and it's like, it's not clear whether she dies in that moment or she's like abducted or whatever and just taken
the way she whirs around, she doesn't just disintegrate. So I think he either changed her into energy or did something. I'm just speculating.
I think so too. And that's how I choose to interpret it as well. But it is like ambiguous. It's not a very clear, this is what happened and we're going to tell you and explain it.
Yeah, literalists don't like our movies.
Literalists do not like any of our movies.
I was gonna say I thought it was cool what she named him.
I was trying to figure that out. She named the alien Indian and called the alien
because he
Indian.
shot little arrows. Because he shot little arrows that killed the rapist.
Oh, the arrows. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense and is also problematic. Fun. It was the 80s. Yeah. Could have come up with a better name, but you know.
I got it.
I guess one last thought on this film that I want to share is that I was also just kind of reading a little bit about the filmmakers and everything, and because as you get into this film, you see like a lot of like, you know, Eastern European names, and The director is Russian, Jewish. And like a lot of the people who worked on this film were recent immigrants. And so there's also this like otherness of like the alien seeing New York City through foreign eyes and seeing America through foreign eyes. So that's something that was very, very common during this period of time, because there were a lot of these films being made, especially like during the Reagan years, I read. And that like that alienness is also kind of like functioning as a lens for the director and the other people involved in the making of the film to say, you know, hey, we're outsiders and this is what we're observing. And that's kind of a really cool device as well, I think.
I love seeing European intellectuals make movies about punk, because like Punk in London was made by a German crew, and their perspective is so incredible. I mean,
and like punk is really my subculture, so it's like I know I'm young for it. I wasn't here in the early 80s,
I'm old for it, but I like it.
I'm like 90s plus punk. It's really like my main subculture, and I kind of feel like I fit into several of them, but the whole like, you know, especially like the kind of anarchist like side of punk that's very like DIY and very like mutual aid and very like help your community and all that stuff. So getting to see that and like being aware of it is like, you know, the history of it and the culture of it and the fact that it differs so much from country to country. Like British punk and American punk, totally different. And like me, you know, growing up in the South, totally different from other parts of the US even. And it's really, really interesting to see that. And I agree with you that like seeing kind of a European intellectual take on the American, specifically New York City punk scene is really, really interesting.
It was a great era as far as artistically, and a lot of crazy things going on.
Yeah.
So you like the movie?
Loved this movie. Absolutely. Like, I don't know where it is in my favorites at this point, but I'm adding it to my favorites. Like, it's amazing. Really, really, really enjoyed it.
I got this one. I don't know if anyone here has this Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray.
Nice.
I'm
gonna have to get it on Blu-ray. Like, you know,
I got so excited I pre-ordered it when
person for helping us out with acquiring this film in order for me to be able to watch it. So shout out to Dwayne. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Dwayne. I think next in our panel is Richard Reynolds.
And I hate this, but I do have to run because of reasons. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like
we all come and go. It's how this
family
works.
Emergency stuff sucks, but it's a thing that happens. So
as long as everybody gets their, you know, time to shine, like I told you, that's what I'm concerned about. We don't have to have 20 people at one time.
Yeah. Yep. And I will watch the things and I will leave comments and be like, you guys are amazing. Thank you. So
thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Take
Good night,
care.
Kaelyn. Excellent job.
It was a good one.